10 longest WWE storylines ever. Let's watch.
WWE throughout their history have been known to deliver hard-hitting, long-term, compelling storylines. For an extended storyline to work, it should have interesting character motives attached, and WWE should slowly and gradually add
Y'all saw how Roman got out of that RKO?
As exciting as humanly possible. This storyline will
I
then
felt it
traditionally
coming.
pay off in a huge pay-per-view match, and if WWE have told a story effectively, then the payoff match will result in financial and critical success. Join us now as WrestleMania looks at 10 of the longest storylines in WWE history. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out our new channel, WrestleMania Shorts. Number 10, Dean Ambrose vs Seth Rollins. June 2nd, 2014 was the day WWE made the bold decision to disband The Shield. The Shield were one of the most popular stables of all time, but WWE realized that they had created 3 absolute megastars and it was time for the group to go their separate ways. Roman Reigns would be instantly pushed into the main event scene, whilst WWE would begin a feud between Dean Ambrose and the individual responsible for The Shield's demise, Seth Rollins. Throughout the summer of 2014, the two would feud and they had unbelievable chemistry inside the ring. Their matches were critically acclaimed by fans and critics, and this eventually culminated when the two main evented the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view over John Cena and Randy Orton. WWE revisited this feud several times over the next few years, and the storyline is one of the longest storylines WWE have ever delivered in the PG era. In 2015, they would feud over the title and even had a vastly underrated ladder match at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. In 2018, the two would face off once again, this time with their roles reversed as Ambrose would now be the heel. Whilst this chapter of their rivalry had issues from a creative aspect, it was still evident how well the two worked together, and hopefully one day the two elite talents get to add one final chapter to their storied rivalry. Number 9, John Cena vs The Rock. When The Rock returned to WWE in 2011, it seemed only a matter of time before WWE announced The Rock vs John Cena. WWE made the unique move to announce the match with 1 year of notice, as on the Raw after WrestleMania 27, both men would agree to wrestle each other in the main event of WrestleMania 28. This meant that WWE had 1 full year to build a match, and most of the build fell on Cena's shoulders, as The Rock would be absent for 90% of the calendar year. They would market the WrestleMania 28 match as a once-in-a-lifetime encounter. Yet they decided to book a rematch for WrestleMania 29. Basically. This meant that the feud lasted way longer than it needed to and ultimately hindered the legacy of the rivalry itself. Number 8, Bret Hart vs Owen Hart. One of the strongest storylines of the early 90s was the feud between Bret Hart and his brother Owen. The two would initially be presented as having a thriving, healthy relationship, yet over time, Owen gradually got more and more jealous of his brother's astronomical success, and this eventually led to Owen turning on his own brother. This turn worked because it was built over time and it happened organically. The two brothers would collide at WrestleMania 10 in an all-time classic, and would meet at the 94 SummerSlam event for the WWE title. Owen and Hart would remain as mortal enemies for years, but in 1997 they rekindled their bond to form the outstanding stable known as the New Hart Foundation. Even though some may have been critical that Owen and Bret were now on good terms again, the segments and matches they delivered whilst on the same page were truly special. The Hart vs Hart saga was a rivalry that had developed over a period of time, and it worked wonders for the credibility of both performers. Whilst Bret was always considered to be a main event talent, this feud allowed fans to realize that Owen was also a major player and he had every tool it took to become a world champion in WWE. Number 7, The Rock vs Stone Cold Steve.
When do y'all think the Usos, the twins, when do y'all think they're going to come back together and put... Like, how long do you think the storyline is going to go? Because it's just so awkward and weird right now between Roman, Jimmy, and Solo, and Jay being over on Raw. But how long do you think it's gonna be until like they come back together, if or when they do? But yeah, right now it's a little awkward, especially last Friday. It was a little weird. So I don't know. I don't know how that storyline is gonna go now that we got Randy back, and you know he is a big threat right now for the bloodline. So I don't know, leave some comments down below.
Austin. The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin's rivalry is considered to be one of the most important feuds of all time. The two first feuded in 1997 over the Intercontinental title, and whilst feuding over the WWE's mid-card title, it was apparent that both men had natural chemistry together as their matches were excellent and they seemed to be wrestling soulmates. 2 years later, both talents had reached new heights in WWE and both were absolute megastars. This meant that they main evented WrestleMania 15 for the title, and once again their chemistry was undeniable. WWE always kept the aura surrounding The Rock and Austin's feud intact, as their prior history would always be mentioned when they were on screen together, yet WWE wanted to keep their 1v1 matches special as they knew they were box office draws. The two collided once again in 2001 in a heated feud over the title, and they main evented WrestleMania 17. This was arguably their finest match against each other, and it notably featured Austin turning heel. The two would have other matches in 2001, but it was in 2003 in which their iconic rivalry came to a close. The two would wrestle in Austin's initial retirement match at WrestleMania 19, and it was a fitting end to a legendary career and a classy and respectful close to one of the most influential and compelling storylines WWE had ever told. Number 6. Triple H vs Shawn Michaels. The idea of seeing Triple H face off against Shawn Michaels was a dream concept for fans throughout the Attitude Era, and when HBK returned to WWE in 2002, they finally had the opportunity to deliver the highly anticipated rivalry. Triple H would turn on HBK in the summer of 2002, and this led to a classic match at the SummerSlam event. This match highlighted that HBK was once again an all-time great performer, and it showcased just how special the chemistry was between the two real-life best friends. The two would feud throughout the Ruthless Aggression era, and their matches seemed to get better and better. The two would wrestle in every gimmick match imaginable, from 3 stages of hell to Hell in a Cell, and whilst most fans knew that they were friends in real life, they managed to convince a strong portion of the fan base that they genuinely hated each other. The feud in total lasted for around 4 years, and it culminated when the two would join forces against a common enemy in Vince McMahon and reform the troublesome group known as DX. Number 5. Hulk Hogan vs Macho Man Randy Savage. It seemed like only a matter of time before Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan's friendship disintegrated. The two became friends and formed the Mega Powers following WrestleMania 4, and whilst it was entertaining to see the duo as friends and have major matches as a team, there was considerable money to be made from having the two wrestle in a 1v1 match. They did the smart thing by not rushing the match itself. Instead, over the course of 12 months,
Savage
they
is so
would plant seeds
funny.
that Savage was getting jealous of Hogan, and he was getting concerned about Hogan potentially stealing Miss Elizabeth away from him. Savage would eventually hit his breaking point, and the friendship would dissolve, leading to a title match between the two at WrestleMania 5, in which Hogan came out with the W. Number 4. Triple H vs Batista. Evolution was designed to make stars, and it certainly did that. Both Randy Orton and Batista became legitimate main event level draws in WWE, but it was the story they told with Batista that was handled particularly well. Following Evolution turning on Orton in 2004, Batista became increasingly paranoid that Triple H would do the same thing to him. They decided to present Batista as someone that was smarter than the game, as he'd always seemed one step ahead and he knew what Triple H was thinking. WWE had planted the seeds for Batista to be the one to turn on the game, and this finally happened on the road to WrestleMania 21. The storyline was magnificent, and it was WWE delivering some of their finest work. The story itself was a monstrous success, as WrestleMania 21 headlined by Batista vs Triple H attracted over 1 million pay-per-view buys. The feud between the two would continue throughout 2005 and even revisited the feud in 2019 for Batista's final ever match. Number 3. Stone Cold Steve Austin vs Mr. McMahon. Arguably the most important rivalry of the Attitude Era was between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mr. McMahon. The feud was unbelievably hot, and some fans would even consider it to be the greatest feud in WWE history. The feud first began way back in 1998 when McMahon didn't want Austin to be the face of the company. This bad blood lasted several calendar years, with McMahon throwing obstacle after obstacle in Austin's direction. The reason that the feud worked was because it was one of the first times in WWE history that a wrestler versus authority figure story had been told, and it perfectly reflected the mindset of anyone who had a boss in the 90s. The feud took an odd turn in 2001 when the two became on-screen friends. However, by the end of 2001, McMahon was back to loathing everything about Austin. Even when he retired in 2003, WWE would revisit the feud multiple times for special events. McMahon even received a Stone Cold Stunner at WrestleMania 38 over 2 decades after the feud initially began. Number 2. The Bloodline Saga. But WWE did the seemingly unthinkable in the summer of 2020 where they turned Roman Reigns heel. What followed was a storyline involving Reigns and the Usos and the formation of the Bloodline faction. This storyline has continued to play out over several years and eventually included the addition of Sami Zayn and Solo Sikoa. Every detail in the storyline has been told with deliberate intent and consideration, and the storyline, particularly the elements relating to Zayn, have received widespread universal acclaim. The Bloodline saga has also been a financial success, with Bloodline merchandise being a consistent top seller for WWE and segments involving the stable attracting millions upon millions of viewers. The storyline is far from over, and when the storyline does eventually come to a dramatic end, it's going to go down as one of the WWE's most popular storylines ever. And number one, The Undertaker vs. Kane. The debut of Kane worked so well because it was foreshadowed with months of riveting storytelling from The Undertaker and Paul Bearer. By the time Kane arrived in WWE at the Bad Blood pay-per-view in '97, fans already knew who he was and what his purpose as a character happened to be. The storyline between the two half-brothers was expertly crafted, and there's a reason fans still talk about how special it was even to this day. The WWE did this smart thing by keeping their initial match off the table until WrestleMania 14. This allowed the hype for the match to build and build. The two half-brothers would feud throughout the Attitude Era, and each time they would add layers onto the story to make it one of the most well-rounded stories they've ever told. When the two weren't trying to annihilate each other, they were presented as a tag team on TV, and this was equally as compelling, and the Brothers of Destruction duo were incredibly popular with fans of all ages. The two also managed to feud into the next two respective eras of WWE. They would feud in 2004 and ultimately collide at WrestleMania 20, and even feuded in the PG era in 2010 in the feud over the World Heavyweight title. Well, there you have it, folks. 10 of the longest storylines in WWE history.
Alright, y'all, that's gonna do it for this reaction. Make sure to leave some likes and comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. I will see y'all in the next one. Toodles.